I'm expecting the worst for the Chicago Bears with Nathan Peterman starting against the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday. I don't think it's going to be very pretty. But I still want to try and find some good reasons to watch this game and why we might still be able to have some fun with it on Sunday.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lorin Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Bears. You can like Locked On Bears on Facebook. Join the Locked On Bears Facebook group for even more Bears talk. And make sure you hit that subscribe button on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel to keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. On the show today, we try and find a reason to tune into this Bears-Vikings game, why this game is worth watching despite no stakes for the Bears, no Justin Fields, a lot of Nathan Peterman, and a fan base not universally, but pretty darn close to universally rooting for a loss in order to secure that number one overall pick with a potential Houston Texans victory. But we're going to still try and make this game worth watching and have some fun with it. We'll kind of talk about what is at stake, even if it's not very much, the kind of players that we want to see and how we want to see the team work with those players, and at the very least, embracing the chaos that will be the Nathan Peterman experience. I do think, for me, this game, a lot of it will be a reflection of the coaching staff, and that's what I'm going to be watching for, I think, first and foremost. We could take the time and go through some of the young players that are going to get extended opportunities. Harrison Hand is probably going to start at cornerback if Jalen Jones can't go with his concussion issues. We might see some other guys rotate on the defensive line, and Dieter Eisland's going to start at right guard. We could talk about some of those guys. But for me, they're backups, and they're not guys that we know a lot about. And more broadly, I want to see how this coaching staff handles this game and how the team responds to how the coaching staff handles this game. That this Week 18 game just has very little reason or motivation for the Bears to win, for players to be there. They're going to collect a paycheck and stuff, but it's about as pointless as it can get. And I want to see this team still play hard. And I see that as a direct reflection of the coaching staff. Some of it is the players and their individual makeup. We heard Ryan Poles talk about how much they're emphasizing players with the right kind of individual wiring to be motivated and, intrinsically motivated and self-starters and go out there and fight for their team. But it's also on the coaching staff to motivate these guys, keep their energy up, and to play hard for 4 quarters of an otherwise meaningless Week 18 game. It will really feel like a preseason game, and I'm okay with that. But let's see them treat it like an opportunity to get better. Let's see them play hard for 4 quarters. Because it really felt like against Detroit this last week, especially right after halftime, once they got down even farther, didn't feel like the defense was juiced up. Felt like the effort was lacking a little bit there. Guys getting out of position, guys maybe not hustling 100%, and the offense just kind of flat and dead. And I certainly don't think they were quitting fully, but it just felt like they weren't fully engaged and trying hardest and believing that they could win late in that Detroit Lions game. And so I want to see now a whole game. A week later, will there be lingering sort of stagnance? Stagnance, is that a word? A lingering amount of stagnant feeling from the Lions game? Will that just sort of drift through and they'll just sort of kind of breeze through this Vikings game and just kind of get it over with to kick it off, run some clock, get out of here, go home, and pack it in for the season? Or will these guys go out there and say, hey, you only get 17 opportunities to play professional football each season. And for a lot of these guys, this might be one of the first times they've got to be on the field and play professional football. Dieter Eisland maybe making his first career start at right guard, or Harrison Hand, getting onto the field for the Bears in more of a starting role this time where he hasn't been playing all season. Can these guys, especially the young guys filling in, will they have that sort of desire, that juice, that appreciation for the opportunity that they're going to get to put their play on tape for the Bears to see for next season and for every other team in the NFL to see if they're not part of the Bears next season? And that's where it feels kind of like preseason to me as well, where we talk about, do preseason games matter? Do they not? For a lot of those guys in the preseason, this is their only shot to show the Bears and the rest of the league what they can do. Obviously, if they're on the field now, the Bears have a certain amount of faith in what they can do, and it's why they're choosing to play them over any other guy they could find on the street at this stage of the process. But this is your opportunity to show every other team that you belong on a roster and that you should have been playing earlier in the season, that you belong to be playing not just as the third string option after 2 or 3 guys ahead of you get hurt on the depth chart, but show that you're a guy that a team can count on, can rely on, specifically on offense and defense, in addition to everything else you may have been able to show up to this point on special teams. Let's see who shows up for this game, who plays hard for this game, and who doesn't. Who does pack it in? You could certainly understand an aging veteran kind of feeling like, hey, why am I going to risk my body at this stage of my career? I'm not going to name names or anything. No one's really stood out to me in that particular way, but you could see where an older player in their 30s might be a little bit less motivated than a younger player in their early 20s that just wants to get on the field and play NFL football in a real game, not a preseason game. It is a real game, but it feels like a preseason game against a real opponent, a divisional opponent at that, and some opportunity as well to play spoiler to the Vikings trying to get that 2 seed. They need to win, and they need the Seahawks or whoever to win in the second window. I don't remember what the matchup is that they're required to, but there's something there to try and spoil for the Vikings, and weird things happen in Week 18. It's not the only way I'll be watching this coaching staff and evaluating from that perspective in this game, though, because I really want to see, given the limitations and the change at quarterback, how this team approaches this game schematically, X's and O's, and play calling. And we'll look at some of the different dynamics that are going to go into that for Luke Getsy on offense and Alan Williams on defense next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is presented by our friends at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the better way to do daily fantasy sports because PrizePicks puts you in complete control. Unlike the other daily fantasy platforms where whether you win or lose is going to be dependent on what other people met in their lineup, PrizePicks has no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they'll score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry, any sport, any competition, including, of course, Bears-Vikings. And it's super easy to enter. It literally takes 60 seconds or less. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with our promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Just don't forget to enter that promo code LOCKEDON at sign-up for an instant deposit match up to $100. We have seen this Bears offense. Gonna do that every time. We have seen this Bears offense without Justin Fields this season. We saw the Trevor Siemian game, and there have been a couple of moments when Nathan Peterman has stepped onto the field briefly. But I'm particularly curious to see how they approach it, not only without Fields, but without some of the other pieces on both sides of the ball. And I think this will be a reflection, again, on the coaching staff and how well they're able to adapt and how well they're able to scheme up and, have the X's and O's to find ways to be successful in difficult situations lacking talent. It's not reasonable to expect Luke Getsy to scheme up and draw up all the right plays and call them in the right order to get Nathan Peterman to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, right? We got to make sure that our expectations are appropriate here. I am not expecting the Chicago Bears to score more than 14 points in this game. And I'm not expecting the Chicago Bears to win or even keep it super, super close on the scoreboard. But let's see if Luke Getsy has a couple of tricks up his sleeve. Let's see if Luke Getsy can do some different things on offense to help Nathan Peterman, to put him in a better position to be successful, particularly with everything else going on around him. And this will apply to the defense too in a moment. But you think about Luke Getsy has shown us innovation and creativity and an ability to cater the offense around Justin Fields to involve his legs more, to move the pocket more. We saw just against the Lions, a really creative kind of first-of-its-kind play where Cole Kmet took the snap and tossed it to Justin Fields as the power sweep toss there with Fields in the backfield as a result. Luke Getsy's got some of these ideas, right? He knows a lot about offensive football and has done a lot of very good things with this offense. Room for criticism for the job he's done at times as well. Certainly has not been a perfect offensive coordinator. But let's see then what he can do with Peterman. And when you have Dieter Iselin at right guard, can they speed up this offense properly to get the ball out of Peterman's hands and make sure Nathan Peterman takes care of the football in that process and doesn't throw 5 first-half interceptions like he did with the Buffalo Bills early in his career? Can they mitigate some of that potential damage here? Can they find different ways to run the ball when the defense knows the passing game is not going to be a threat? It wasn't even a huge threat with Justin Fields in there. It's much less of a threat with Nathan Peterman in there. But can they find ways to manufacture a passing game, even if Claypool isn't 100% and Pettis is banged up and the rest of your receiving core, well, including those guys, just hasn't looked like an NFL caliber receiving core? Can you scheme guys open consistently when they might not have the route running ability to get open themselves? Can they get Cole Kmet back more involved in this offense? Can you maximize the most out of the weapons that you do have, which isn't very much? And so let's not expect them to squeeze out and maximize a ton into high-flying offense. But I think it'll be notable if this offense certainly, is shut out. Can they get some first downs? Can they have some scoring drives? Can they look like an offense that finds some rhythm despite everything circling around them and really not going their way? That would, everything becoming a potential barrier to offensive success that we see across this roster, largely due to injuries, but also just an existing lack of talent. Get the ball into the hands of your best players, which your 2 best players might both be your running backs, and can we find different ways to move this offense? Similar thing defensively, right? We're still looking for a pass rush solution, but they called up Jalen Holmes from the practice squad, and Terrell Lewis as well. They've been rotating Andrew Brown in there on the defensive line. They've got some fresh blood in there. Can Alan Williams find the right combinations, the right amount of blitzing and the right types of blitzing when they do blitz, the right stunts, the right defensive line alignments? Justin Jones has been playing edge rusher sometimes and getting 2 defensive tackles with him on the field. Can they find a mix of knowing when to blitz and when not to blitz to get some pressure on Kirk Cousins? We know that he's particularly vulnerable to that. And it's easier said than done to get that pass rush when it's lacking with these players, but can they find some ways to actually do it? Or in this secondary, we know Josh Blackwell is now out for the season. We know Jalen Jones may or may not play. So it's going to be Gordon and Brisker and DeAndre Houston-Carson, and then Harrison Hand and either Michael Ojemudia or Breon Borders as your other cornerbacks in there. Guys that you probably didn't know were on the roster, that I didn't really realize were on the roster until I looked and saw, oh yeah, that's who's stuck on the bottom of this depth chart now. I mean, you've got guys off the street coming in at cornerback, lining up against Justin Jefferson. I don't think you're going to have Kyler Gordon shadow Justin Jefferson all over the field, and there's going to be times when these guys need to cover Justin Jefferson. And these guys seem, no offense to them, but just woefully undermatched in that matchup. But can Alan Williams balance the need to apply other coverage help to Justin Jefferson without, completely neglecting everybody else on the field for the Vikings? And it seemed like in the first Vikings matchup, there were too many times when you saw Jalen Jones one-on-one in man coverage with Justin Jefferson and lo and behold, Justin Jefferson has a huge game and goes off for a bunch of yards. It's not realistic to expect this secondary and this group of defense to shut down the Vikings offense and shut down Justin Jefferson, the way that Jaire Alexander was able to do a bit last week against the Green Bay Packers. Can't say that's the expectation, but can they limit the damage? Can they cap it somewhere? Can they make the Vikings earn it? Or are they just going to march up and down the field every single drive and take a bunch of free yards and free space against this defense and really have no trouble and barely break a sweat on their way to 35 points? That's what I want to see from this Bears coaching staff. How can the defense maximize the most out of what little talent it has? Understanding that maximization still likely won't be a very good defense, but will the defense and offense look like they're playing the best they possibly can, given the talent that they have? Does it feel like the coaching staff is getting the most out of these players and doing everything in their power to have success in this game? Or are they just going to kind of stick with the tried and true, whatever they've been doing, and live with the results in an otherwise meaningless game? The coaches got to show up just as much as the players do. But I am curious to see what's going to happen with some of these players individually. And mostly I want to lean into the Nathan Peterman experience and appreciate it and enjoy the ride for whatever it will bring. We'll make the case not exactly for Nathan Peterman, but for embracing the chaos next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by our friends at BetOnline, the number one source for all of your sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis. Pulling up the line right now for Bears-Vikings at BetOnline. It moved quite a bit when Justin Fields was announced out for the game. It had jumped to Vikings -8. It's shifted a little bit back to Vikings -7.5, Bears +7.5. The money line there would be Vikings -330 straight up, and the Bears straight up +275. The over-under set at 43, which I would expect to be largely carried by the Minnesota score more so than the Chicago score. If you like those odds, BetOnline is going to be the place to go, not only for this Bears-Vikings game, but for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season and college football playoffs now, to basketball, soccer, tennis, hockey, you name it. They've got it all at betonline.net. It's the fastest and easiest way to get all the sports betting information you could possibly need. Head on over to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about all the different trends and action happening each and every day. BetOnline, where the game starts. I've spent maybe even more time than I should on this podcast over this season, I guess, complaining about Nathan Peterman, feeling like it's no reason to have him on the roster. Why bother playing him when we already know he's a bad quarterback, and you could have had some undrafted free agent or just some unknown quarterback that might be good, might be bad, we don't know, and find out with them playing, as opposed to Peterman, where I don't think there's a lot to find out about Nathan Peterman. But now that this is our unavoidable reality, now that doom has already been cast upon us for this game, and that we must endure the Peterman in this game, I want to lean into the chaos. I really want to take it all in and enjoy whatever the Peterman experience provides us, and perhaps even especially if it gives us some sort of hilarity. That's what I'm rooting for this weekend. That's what I'm rooting for in the Bears-Vikings game. Like, yeah, if the Bears lose, better draft pick, sure. And of course, you always like to see a Chicago Bears victory, the Victory Monday and the feeling that comes with that, sure. But like, for me, I'm rooting for maximum wacky Nathan Peterman stuff. Like, I don't know that so not specifically. Am I specifically rooting for 5 interceptions in the first half? Maybe not, but I want to be able to laugh at how things go for this Bears team. Like I was talking on a Vikings podcast yesterday with Arif Hassan from Locked On Sports Minnesota. We were talking about Nathan Peterman a little bit, and like how we were talking about like his interceptions ratio and how he's thrown like 13 interceptions in 12 career games and stuff. And he was like, well, he hasn't thrown an interception since 2018 with the Bills. And I was like, no, actually, against the Bills earlier this season for the Bears when he came in, he threw an interception late in that game. And it's just like, of course, like it's hilarious. Like, of course, he threw an interception on 5 pass attempts in garbage time in the fourth quarter against the Buffalo Bills. Not that every interception is fully his fault, and there's more nuance than that, but I want to see wild, wacky, fun things happen. I want to see, the fumble that Butterfingers through the hands and then somebody kicks it and you got Benny Hill music. Remember the show, like the Football Follies shows that they would do on NFL Network where it was like lowlights and they'd show weird fumbles and tips and they'd put goofy sound effects over it and stuff. Like, that's what I want from this game. And I think we should all embrace whatever the Nathan Peterman experience is going to bring with us, that we can laugh at 5 interceptions in the first half if he's able to do it. Because again, the game doesn't really matter. And so I think the worst outcome, the worst case scenario for me in this game is Nathan Peterman going, 15 of 25 for 175 yards, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions, and a 70 passer rating, right? If he just goes full game manager and is check down Charlie and never throws a pass beyond the sticks and just, really doesn't do anything but kind of game manage and hold this team back at quarterback, that sounds so incredibly boring. And it really makes me not want to watch the game. And I would much rather watch the game where we're on the edge of our seat wondering if he's going to get another 5 interception half in here. You're like, oh, he's got 2. Like, are we going for 5? Can we get 3? Where's 3 going to come? I want him to throw passes downfield. I want him to make decisions that you just look and you go, why the heck did he throw that? What is going on in this Bears-Vikings game? I want that energy to come out of this. And I don't mean to put this all on Nathan Peterman, right? I want other ways for this to happen. I want Kirk Cousins to slip and fall backwards. And there was a Vikings game. I don't remember if it was the Vikings that had the safety, but there was that game where the team was at the 1 yard line, their own 1 yard line, and they slipped and fell and got the safety back in the end zone and just weird stuff. I want the kickoff return touchdown from Velus Jones. I want Kirk Cousins to have a you like that moment. I want David Montgomery to bounce off some guys or maybe leap somebody or, somersault and, I want the weird things in this game. I want a Cole Kmet one-handed squeeze the ball against the defender's back to come down with the catch. I want the batted pass interception that's batted 3 times before somebody can finally come down with it. I want balls hitting the back of players' helmets. Just like bouncing. I want the oblong, strange brown ball to bounce in funny directions and give us something entertaining in this football game, because I just don't think the pure quarterbacking ability of Nathan Peterman is enough for us to get significant entertainment value on its own in a vacuum. I need something extra in this game that you just kind of look back and remember, like, wow, what a weird Bears-Vikings game that was. We've seen weird Bears-Vikings games, even with, Amir Smith-Marset at the end of the one in Week 5, fumbling the ball back to his former team. I know it was heartbreaking, and it sucked, and it was annoying to watch, but, really weird outcome. That exact play there, the receiver from the former team, playing against his former team, revenge game, gets the ball, literally ripped out of his hands, not just a peanut punch, pop it out there, or not just a drop pass, but literally taken from his hands. Or you think back to past, was it 2019 or 2019 end of the season when the Vikings started their backup quarterback Sean Mannion and they almost beat the Bears, and that was just a weird game of backups, kind of like this one that ended up surprisingly close, and the Bears, the Bears almost lost that game to Sean Mannion at that stage, or think way back to was it 2011, 2010, the Devin Aromashadu game where, Cutler and company took them into overtime, and then it was a 30, 40-yard touchdown pass to the unlikely hero Devin Aromashadu making a name for himself. Give me some kind of storyline or something else out of this game that we can point to as fun, new, different, exciting. It doesn't have to be positive. It doesn't have to be a Bears victory. It doesn't have to be a wild Bears touchdown. It doesn't have to be a play that ended up being good for the Bears. I just want to see it. I want to see something fun in this game, so I don't feel like I sat there on my couch and watched 3 hours of a waste of time, of just a game that had nothing really valuable to take from it. You didn't really learn anything about the team. They just were bad again, and that's it. And they lose game number 10, and it's 28-13 or 35-13 Vikings, and yeah, it was a blowout, and it was just garbage time for the whole game, and we didn't get anything out of it. That's what I'm hoping to avoid, and I hope you two can embrace whatever chaos might come here. I think I mentioned it in the Crossover Thursday podcast, but my bold prediction is that Nathan Peterman gets benched at some point in this game, and that we do see Tim Boyle attempt some passes in this game. And let's see Tim Boyle, spin move somebody into the end zone, right? Something like that. Give me some kind of fun, just abnormality in this game from a season that's had just a lot. This has been a lot. This has been a long, difficult season for you as a Chicago Bears fan, and I want to make sure that you acknowledge that we acknowledge that collectively. Like, this has been tough. This has been difficult. It hasn't always been that fun. Justin Fields has made it fun, but we're really at the most difficult, least fun part of this process now. So I appreciate you making Locked On Bears a part of that journey all season long. And since we're in the new year, appreciate you making Locked On Bears a part of your year last year. We broke 1 million downloads again last season. I think we were at 1.2 this year. Second straight year over 1 million. We're still growing, and I appreciate every single one of you that clicked play on any episode of the Locked On Bears podcast last year and are continuing to do so this year. I hope, if so, you've hit that subscribe button so you're keeping up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Really want to thank you for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. If you're looking for your second listen, you can check out Locked On Vikings with Luke Braun to get the opponent scouting report, find out everything going on with the Vikings. We like Luke. He's a good guy. I think we enjoy his interviews more so than we enjoy our crossovers with our friends over at Locked On Packers. So go check out Locked On Vikings for more on the Vikings. Come on back on Monday for another episode of Locked On Bears. And of course, whatever happens in that game, the wackiness, the chaos, the boring, the good, the bad, and the boring, we'll break it all down for you right here on the podcast and make sure that you have another opportunity to bear down.